counts us down.
Dun dun dun.
Welcome to the Transforming Matters podcast, where ordinary women do the extraordinary. I'm your host, Rachel Babaganov, and I'm so honored to be sitting again with Amanda Biccum. Amanda is, an incredible woman doing many things.
Mm.
The coach, she works with pleasure, embodiment, and many other things, which I'm probably not going to say all of them right now, but you can share a little more about yourself. And we have had another podcast before where we spoke
Mm.
about the power of women coming together, and it was a very beautiful conversation. And so I'm really grateful to have you here again. Well,
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be back. I love how the worlds keep colliding and intertwining, over the years, which was really beautiful to also watch your growth as well.
thanks for
Yeah.
saying. I mean, it's beautiful also because you were, one of those women doing this even before way back 10 years ago, and so it's amazing now to be doing this work and be able to connect with you. So maybe we just start a little bit with what you're doing now, what you're up to. I would love to hear a little bit about your life.
Yeah, so it's funny. I was just speaking to you before we got on, and I'm in this interesting transition, and I'm sitting with the intention of wanting to straddle both worlds. And what I mean by that is I used to work a lot in the online space. I held online programs, and that's where we met, was through one of the online, I think it was the Pleasure Academy. Was it right? Yeah. So I used to hold this a lot of big online containers. And I love the online world. It's been really supportive for me to reach and work with women all over the world. And I really love being in person. And a lot of the work I do, I live in Amsterdam, so a lot of the work I do is around Tantra and sacred sexuality and embodiment and temples and temple arts. And I love both of these worlds. The truth is I love both of these worlds. And yeah, it's a bit of a journey to see how can I cultivate and create an online world where people from around the world who don't have the opportunity to join me in a retreat or at a workshop, they can start to taste and experience some of this work and this world of embodiment and pleasure. And how can I also be doing the thing that I really love doing as well, which is showing up in person and cultivating and creating workshops and retreats. And yeah, so I'm in this navigation. This is the year of refinement where I really look at both of these and I say, okay, how can I have my online world and continue to invite people into this world who maybe aren't ready for retreats and in-person experiences? And how can I balance my time as well with the in-person experiences that I'm doing, which bring me a different type of pleasure? So this is a little bit about, yeah, kind of what I'm up to now. It's still all around the world of embodiment and pleasure and polarity and sexuality, and yeah, feels really good. And curiosity and refinement are my words for this year.
I love it. I love it. I always love when we're constantly transforming ourselves, and allow the process to happen as it does naturally. Things change and evolve, and instead of fighting it, we go with it. And I think that's, yeah, it's really important and beautiful.
Yeah, it's been interesting for me because I've been just kind of looking at the world of Instagram and the people who I'm inspired by, and looking to see who does both, who is the person who does both and does them well. I haven't yet seen an example. So if you find someone, like I find people who are either more in the in person or more in the online, and I kind of found one woman who I'm really inspired by, but she still does way more online. She does ayahuasca ceremonies and things like that, offline. But yeah, so if you find anyone who you're like, wow, they're killing it, send them my way. I'm very curious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also like it's interesting because the topic I want to talk about today is like how we can really as women honor our cycle and work with it. And I find it fascinating because, you know, you are an embodied woman, but you're also like doing things and then being able to navigate an online world plus in-person stuff. It's a lot of energy. I know because like majority of stuff we do is in-person big retreats and retreats and weekends, and I know it's amazing, but at the end of it I leave oftentimes feeling like that took a lot of energy from me, actually. You know, it's you hold a big space for people, and it also takes a lot of energy. So I'm really curious how you navigate that with also honoring yourself and your body and your rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because one of the first courses inside the Pleasure Academy, which was the journey that you joined me with years ago, the first thing I taught you guys, I'm sure you remember, was about your cycle and how you cannot be an embodied woman if you don't have a connection to your cycle. And if anybody out there is like, I really want to become more embodied, or I really want to connect to my pleasure, where do I begin? I still have the course, Cycle Wisdom. I just did a sale on it last week. And it's the key. It's the key to the way the feminine works in general. But we live in a very masculine, structured, and oriented society, which doesn't really understand that the way that every Monday isn't the same for a woman unless she's on birth control, and then her hormones are more stable and more regular. But for a woman who is more in her natural rhythm and is more in tune with her cycle, she's going to have weeks of production and weeks of not feeling so productive.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a few things when you speak into this piece around, yeah, leaving an event and feeling exhausted and drained. The first thing that I've noticed, at least for myself, is that it does get easier. Like I do notice that like last year, I really expanded my capacity and I was kind of riding the high of one event after another. And I learned how I'm not always in the lead. So sometimes I'm leading, sometimes I'm co-leading, and that also really supports. I believe for every woman, it's about really understanding what drains you and what gives you energy. So, for instance, some of the things that really drain me are being behind a computer and like fiddling with shit behind the computer, whatever it is I need to set up my email automations or
Yeah.
even creating graphics or anything. Like this screen time really drains me. So one of the reasons that I started also working more in person is because I realized that when I am in person with people, even if I'm in the luteal phase of my cycle, or even if I'm bleeding, um, I can show up still from a place of being me in whatever state I'm in, not needing to perform, not needing to do, needing to bring myself in authentically, maybe moving slower, maybe having less responsibility, maybe asking for more support. Whereas when I'm just working behind the computer, it's just me. So I don't have this community. I don't have this organism around me that is in constant motion and connection with me. It's just me pushing through, if I have to, behind the computer. And so this is one thing that I've personally learned around. Yeah, it actually works more for me. I mean, I gave one of the biggest events ever last year. It was an event for 300 people. It was a big, like, it's called Mr. and Mrs. Presents, and it was a big party. And I was on the first day of my bleed.
Hmm.
But somehow, like the energy and the aliveness and feeding off of the other people gave me what I don't find that same kind of energy and aliveness when I'm sitting behind my computer on day one. I don't do that. So yeah, that's a little bit about, for anybody who's witnessing or listening to this podcast and they want to learn themselves more, I would invite them to inquire with the question, where and what and who brings me energy and what makes me feel depleted. Because as much as we try to plan our life around our cycle, which I highly recommend trying to be aware of it, you can't. Like, I would have never planned my biggest event of the year to be on day one of my bleeds. And it happened. So this is also, I think, a caveat to many of the sisters who are listening and want to learn more about their cycle.
I'm so grateful that you say this because, like, I also try and honor my cycle, but I also do weekends and retreats often. And it often happens that I'm having my period or it's a few days
Yeah.
before my period. And I really love how you said, like, for you, it's just then how you show up and that you don't pretend and that you are where you are. And I feel like, yeah, it's so interesting because it took me such a long time to get there in my work, because I always felt like, okay, I'm working, and so now I need to give something to people. And so if I'm like a little bit more tired because I'm on my cycle, well, I just ignore that and I have to create the space and hold.
Mm,
And it's so beautiful what you said, because in the last women's retreat, I was also like bleeding, and I was like, you know what? Like, there's so many other people here. Like, I don't need to do it all. Like, the space is a
yeah.
created space by all of us. And it was so different in that moment to just like flip the switch. This is also where I am, and I have to
Mm,
honor where I am right now. And it doesn't make me any less than. It's just how it is in the moment.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's the embodied woman, right? Like really choosing to honor and name where you are and bring that into the space and value that, because you also give permission to all the other women who might be premenstrual or bleeding. It's like, my presence and my being in this frequency of yin is actually such a gift to the space. Like, yes, it's amazing when you have a group of women who are ovulating, but how often does that happen? You almost always have someone who is in their bleed or in their luteal phase. And yeah, it gives more permission for the flavors as well, which I think is important.
Really beautiful. I really, yeah, I love it. I have so many other like questions around the cycle, and I also just really want to honor your transition right now and the fact that you're trying something different, because I also feel like, yeah, it's just so beautiful that, yeah, that you can show up in every phase and every stage of life and do it in the way that you do it, which is like, yeah, this is what's happening now. I'm trying something different. I'm going to stay curious. I'm going to try and understand how to make it work. And I guess it also even more plays in when you're moving from country to country and you don't have ability, because then like you're really like you're your home and
Yeah,
like that's really solid.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and luckily I spent 10 years traveling around the world, so I learned how to be comfortable with chaos and comfortable with the unknown and comfortable with the waves of, yeah, not being able to control. And I think that perhaps really helped me. I lived very much in feminine countries. So what I mean by that is like India. It's very chaotic. It's very all over the place. I feel like Bali, Asia in general, is quite feminine. Yeah, and it teaches you that you don't really have control. And so, as much as we can bring awareness to where we are, and we can try to plan things around, yeah, our cycles as women, and okay, be aware that yeah, there's this big party happening, but I'm going to be a few days before my bleed, and I might actually not want to go. But one of the things that I see so many women doing is feeling the obligation and feeling the expectation and feeling like, even though it's my truth actually to just stay here and chill and be by myself and read a book or be with my partner or my cat or whatever it is, there is this expectation that we've created in society. Oh, well, this is my best friend, or this is my, so and so's cousin or whoever, and I really need to go because I said I would. Now, there's one thing to be flaky and you just cancel all the time. And there's another thing to be in integrity with your body. And I feel that if more women started honoring their natural flow and started naming their truth around, hey, I would really love to go and I had it planned. And I noticed that I really need to be with myself right now. I love you. I would love to celebrate you. And my body is calling for something else. Like, what a statement for all of us listening to ourselves, listening to our bodies, men and women. Sure, men don't have hormonal cycles, but they often also feel things, and they also potentially don't listen to those things because we've created this story that, yeah, we need to honor our word all the time, and in that sometimes overstep what is actually happening and what would be the best thing for us. So I think this is a beautiful example of ways in which the world teaches us to live in one way, and where being embodied leaders and just naming what our current reality is and forgiving ourselves if we don't have the energy, and or when we make a plan, be like, hey, I'll put you in the calendar and I'm going to be close to my bleed or on my bleed, so I don't know how I'll feel. Can we check in on that day?
Yeah.
And that already creates much more flexibility and much more attunement to truth that's in the moment. Because it sucks whenever you do something that you don't really want to do, but you did it because you said you would. And then there's a part of you that's not fully present or not fully there or even resents the situation. Nobody wants to be in that energy at the end of the day anyway.
Absolutely. It's happened so many times to me where people do it, and I'm so grateful. I'm like, hey, it's amazing that you're just know what you need. It is clear. Yeah, I think that's something that's so invaluable. Would love to ask you because I think it's one thing when we do it, for example, in our social circles, people understand. But something that I see more and more is like, we're very lucky that, or I can speak for myself, I'm very lucky that I can basically create my schedule. And like, even though there are retreats and workshops and maybe I'm bleeding, I can show up how I am. But a lot of women don't have that luxury and they're in work environments, for example, they cannot just show up where they are because perhaps maybe it calls for something else. And yeah, I would love to know what you think, like when you are a few days before your period or on your period and you cannot always call sick every month, which anyway, I think it's a problem that our society is structured in such a masculine way, but it is how it is. How we can internally make the shift to show up that in a way that feels better for us.
Yeah, so I think this is a big call to every woman out there. You know, it's a big call to every woman because what if every woman in the workforce started saying, "Hey, I'm here. I'm a great performer. I do amazing things." I do amazing. I'm at the second half of my cycle, so I'm just a few days before you. Um, so if a woman can come say, "Hey, you know, look at my numbers, look at what I bring, look at the value I add," and I also want to listen more to my body. So I'm gonna cultivate and create either a work structure, whether it's if you have the ability, depending on what work you do, of course, you never know. But sometimes some of us have the ability to create our own schedules based upon certain projects that we have, etc. If you can create your own personal schedule or schedule your calls or schedule meetings or schedule in the first half of your cycle so you can get the majority of the work done because in the first half of your cycle you have so much more capacity. Like I know that the right around when I'm ovulating, I feel like I can get done in 2 days what people can get done in 2 weeks. I'm like, I am on fire when I use that energy, really. So if you can find a way to shift your schedule or shift your meetings to where the calls or the things that create a lot of stress or strain or challenge taper off towards the end of your bleed, that's one thing you can do. The second thing you can do is start bringing it into to the workplace, to your company, to the teammates that you have. And what if you work with another woman or you work with a couple of women or and you kind of tag team and you're like, hey, you know, maybe you're opposites. It's like, hey, I'm coming down. I'm slowly, my energy is starting to drain. I know you're going up. Are you open to supporting me a little bit more during this week? And I'm super happy to support you in that week. You know, that's another way to bring it in. Another way is just to name and to own with your boss and with your employee. Like, look, staying in connection to my body and my cycle is super important for my health, my mental, physical, emotional well-being. And I realized that, yeah, I want to start doing things a little bit differently. So I'd love to bring in awareness and have a little bit of grace around the last half of my cycle where I might be moving a little bit slow. And I want to name that I've been overstepping myself, if you have been, and overperforming and outdoing things. And I notice that it's starting to take a toll on me, if you feel that's true. And I really want to be given a little bit more grace around this week because it's a lot. It's a lot for me to hold. And it is true that disease creates in our body when we ignore symptoms and we overpush and we overdo. And this is why we have such a culture of burnout from so many people because we're not actually listening to what we have the capacity for. And we're in a very goal based, driven, masculine, hungry ghost kind of society where it's never enough and there's always more to be had. So I really feel that the more and more women who start becoming aware of it, if you don't feel like you can bring it into your boss or make it a conversation because you're in like a super masculine area, then you just start working with yourself and you start doing what you can. You start honoring yourself. Maybe in that week you just don't perform as high. And then usually what I find in myself and with other women that when you give yourself that break, if you can, that you actually have way more energy to do in the next couple weeks,
Oh,
if you can start, yeah, cultivating and creating that. So I believe that if every woman started really making a stand and making a claim that I want to be honored for this cycle, and not making excuses, by the way. If you're moon shaming, which means like I'm gonna shame, or blame or create excuses for being on my moon just to get out of things, like that is very different, and that is not an integrity. And I do see that sometimes happening, because there are times where you don't have a choice and you have to show up, and that's fine. It's sometimes you have to do that in life. And where's that sweet spot, and how can we start bringing that in? That's what I would feel. Yeah.
mm. When you were speaking, I had goosebumps, and it also somehow makes me emotional because I feel it should be so simple and it should be so obvious that we just explain and express these things to our boss, like, hey, now I'm like a little bit more tired because I'm menstruating or I'm right before my period. But it's so not the case in our society, and we actually have to be the ones who bring awareness in the workplace. And I know that there are a lot of allies in men who get it, and I really feel more and more it's happening. But yeah, I love what you say, that we also need to be courageous and go out there and find the people, like you said, with other women who are willing to like exchange with you, or just voicing it, even though it's scary. Somehow,
Yeah.
for gives me also a little still feeling of fear to say, like, actually right now I'm tired and I need to take a little bit of a rest. Like, for me there's still a little bit of shame in that, which is so
Yeah,
sad. Like, it's how
I
my
get
body.
it. Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, even I'm my own boss, and this culture is so ingrained in us. This performance based, like it's about what you do rather than, yeah, who you are or what you bring. It's about your performance. And yeah, I still struggle, even though I'm very aware of my cycle, and even though there was a while in my calendar I would always take off the last week before I bleed. Like I would always take it off. And I would do little things, but there was no calls, there was no interviews, there was no anything. I don't do that anymore, because I feel, yeah, I'm not feeling the drain. Maybe it's because I've gotten the hang of it. After a while, when you get the hang of something, then it's like, yeah, it actually doesn't cost so much energy anyways. But I do feel still there are times when I feel guilty. Like I took even the holidays off. Like I took the holidays off for the first time in I don't know how long, many years. I was off all of Christmas. I was off Instagram. I was off everything, and I was so surprised that I felt a little guilty towards the end. And this is, I think, a big part of, yeah, also changing our culture. Can we create a culture that is more based in, yes, we get to perform. The masculine inside all of us, it fucking loves that. It loves to succeed. And can we also cultivate a culture that is rooted in the quality that you be, that you are, that you bring in your essence, the quality of that moment of human to human connection over just our performance and our production? Yeah.
Mm. I want to say I saw it when you posted, like, I'm offline right now, and I was like, fuck yes you are, like that is so cool. And it's a really good reminder that we need to take a break, even the people who are like, our bosses and our leaders, and
Yeah.
everybody take a break once in a while. It's an insane idea that we can always produce, like, it just, even then, like, you need time to receive and slow down. Maybe it's a different rhythm, but it's
Yeah.
crazy to constantly be producing.
Yeah. I agree.
Mm, beautiful. Okay, so I love this. And something that's coming to me also is, and I'm so curious your thoughts around this, because there's one thing about our energy and the fact that maybe our energy is fluctuating. But for me, I also get truly much more moody and much more sensitive right before my period. And now I'm in a relationship with my husband. We've been together for a long time. I'm much more connected to my cycle. And he also said to me, like, I think more people need to talk about this time right before the period, because I like brought it up to him. I'm like, I want you to know, like, 3 days before my period, you maybe don't want to talk to me about the most important things in the world, because, like, probably I'm not going to be so receptive to it. So
Yeah.
I'm curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, bless your partner. Yeah, I get it. And for me, it's funny because I feel like when I'm a single woman, for some reason, it's not as like intense. Like it's there, but it's not intense. And then I feel like when I'm in partnership, like maybe I feel safer, so like I can feel deeper or something. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's very true. And there's one thing before I go into that. One of the things that I teach inside Cycle Wisdom is something called cycle mapping. So there's one thing to like have an app and know when you're ovulating and know when you're not, and kind of understand your hormones and understand, and you can track your breasts and if they're tender and all these things. However, what I really love is a bit more old school, but it helped me a lot, is I will track every day on my cycle, starting from the day that I bleed, how I feel mentally, physically, emotionally, energetically. And then I track this for 3 months. And then I notice, where is like my killer days? Where is the day where, like you said, it's like 3 days before your bleed? For me, it's day 21, 22. Day
Mm-hmm.
21, 22, nothing can go right. Everything goes wrong. Even on the sunny day, for some reason, it's just like the bird shits on my face kind of a thing, you know? Like
Yeah.
that's just like the
Oh,
energetic that I feel it has. And for every woman, it's different. So for every single woman, it's going to be somewhere in that week. But to know your own code, and this is something that I teach women, it's like, know those days and then prep people around you. So when you're spinning and you're spiraling in shame or fear or self-doubt or whatever, which often comes up in this cycle, in this period, or you're grumpy or you're tired or nobody can do anything right, just let people know, like, oh, these are my days. These are my days where no matter what, don't worry, it's not you, it's totally me. And it's true. It is really true. And it's different for everyone, and it lasts a different length of time, and it affects people differently, but there's a constant similarity and a similar thread, which is I feel way more down. And my positive, optimistic, everything is great, no, even if it's challenging in my life, is much more harder to take on. I feel much less energy, much less creativity. Like my ability to be creative in my business, forget about it. Like, yeah, just don't even think about any creative projects during that period of time. And I'm much more sensitive, and I spin a lot more in my head. So this is where embodiment is even more important during this period of time. And that embodiment could be just lying on the floor, listening to 432 hertz, playing a crystal sound bowl, stretching, sounding, toning, that could be that could be all that you need to do. You don't need to do anything crazy. But this period is super important. And I see this time and time again with my private clients. Whenever they go, whenever I know when they're on that part of their cycle, because the voice messages they start sending me are more around doubt and more around fear and more around all of these things. And I'm like, just for a second, where are you at on your cycle? And then they're like, oh shoot, yeah, right before my bleed. I'm like, so know that and be aware of that, so that way you can say, huh, my human is experiencing this. It feels very real and true. And I know that this is just being impacted by my hormones. And if you can tell your partner or tell people around you, and make joke of it and make light of it, then like, yeah, it's going to be a much easier ride for everybody.
yeah, 100%. It's so amazing, right? Because like I am so aware of it, but still every time I'm on it, it's like it takes you like a roller
Yeah.
coaster. Like it literally happened to me 2 days ago, Amanda. I was like in it, and I'm like, everything is terrible. Oh my God, And I'm like, then the like logical part of my brain is like, I see you. You are
Yes.
your period. None of this is real. Of course it feels real to you. And yeah, it's also like what you're saying holds so much truth to just slow down. And I also feel, I don't know about you, but I feel also in partnership, it's so important at the time to just like be super gentle with each other because yeah, you're just like you're not it really truly for me feels this is going to sound maybe interesting, but I feel in that day I'm hijacked. Like I feel like this
Yeah.
is like
Hormonally hijacked.
yeah,
Totally get that.
I'm
Yeah.
hijacked and it's just what it is. I cannot change it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. There is something, though, there are a few things that I notice have supported me. So this is very normal. It's very common, unless you're on birth control and you're very much hormonally hijacked. then you won't feel these like, and you might feel different waves. Like I remember when I was on birth control, I felt even more crazy, but it was like the crazy didn't have a rhythm. It was just like crazy whenever, like, yeah. And then I got off birth control and I'm like, okay, so the little bit of crazy is still here, but it's only in this specific period. So that feels much better. But one of the things that I recommend and that I've seen the difference for me is taking evening primrose oil. Have you heard of it? Yeah. So if I take evening primrose oil during my cycle, I take around 1,000 milligrams for the first 2 weeks. And then after ovulation, I'll take 2,000 milligrams. And it's great. I've noticed a much better stability in my journey. So like the waves and the dips. I mean, I was feeling it yesterday. I'd be curious to see. I'd be curious to look at my app and see which day I'm on. I'm pretty sure yesterday was like 22 or something because yesterday I was in a spin. I was very much in a spin, and like it's just like this gray and gloomy cloud. It just won't go away. It's just hanging out, and I'm just like, God damn you, you know. Like I'm aware, like you said, I'm aware that this isn't truth. I'm aware that I'm feeling like the doom and gloom spiral, and yeah, I feel yeah. I feel the awareness does support, and also the evening primrose oil, it does also really support me. So maybe that's something you can try.
I absolutely will. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know now you're in partnership, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful, and congratulations. I love seeing
Thank
the
you.
view, and I would be curious also like your experience around this time and being with a partner, and also how you navigate it, if yeah, if there's like intensity between you two, or if you're just feeling, yeah, I mean it's different, right? When you're ovulating, it's like, let's go. I want to be all of you and I want you on me. But then when you're not, you're like, oh my God, like, are we gonna break up right now? Even though it's nothing.
Yeah, totally, totally, totally. Yeah, yeah, I can totally relate to that. Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, the first thing as you shared is letting your partner, first of all, become aware of your cycle. If you're not already and you're listening to this, become aware of your cycle. It's a game changer for your libido, for your ability to understand yourself, for your communication, for your mental health, for everything. Once you become aware of your partner or of your cycle, then you let your partner understand your cycle. So, one of the apps that I use for just basic tracking is called Flow, and Flow just installed partner apps. So now my partner is tracking my cycle. And he's able to, he literally is like, this is amazing, like this is so great. And Flo will like tell him things that he can do, like today your partner's going to be feeling very tired. You will want to, her healthy fats are low, so you're going to want to stock up on chocolate and avocados, and like it's a very cool app, so I highly recommend
Nice.
every woman. I think it's 14.99 for the year or maybe for the month, I can't remember, but it's really nice. It calculates everything. I still recommend cycle mapping because it won't tell you your emotional landscape, obviously. But it's great to have your partner also connected to that. This piece around these waves, around the fears, around breaking up, or around, yes, unsafety and insecurity, it's much higher. It's much higher when there's an emotional instability, and it feels really real. That's also the thing about hormones. It's like it's not just my mind fucking with me. It's literally, it feels real in my body, and it feels like the world is crumbling, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to, like, find my way out of it.
Yeah.
And I smile now because it really feels like that. And I also am aware that this happens, and not every month is the same also, depending on where you're at, depending on the month, depending on what you've, yeah, put your body through, how much you've done, how much stress you have. All of that will also be determining factors, of course. But I think it's super powerful. Again, if you and your partner are both aware that, like, hey, and if he has the consciousness, even if there is a big fight or there is a big rupture in your relationship, if he has the consciousness and has the awareness of your cycle, it's like, hey, babe, I know that things feel really intense right now for both of us. And it is the cloudy time in your cyclical journey, and I think that it's best if we park this right now. I don't think it's serving you or me, and this is a gift that the masculine can do. The masculine can really be that consciousness that can say, hey, I think it's best if we park this right now, because I don't think this is the best time to talk about it. Let's wait until after you bleed. And that's a really beautiful thing that women can do. Don't make decisions until after you've bled. If you're on the second half of your cycle and there's a big decision and you have the opportunity to wait, wait. Really truly wait, bleed on it, let go, let the old go, let that month, let that cycle go. Do something with your blood, make a ritual out of your blood, make a cleansing journey with your blood. But this would be, yeah, highly recommendable if your partner can be the consciousness while you're in the feminine wave of emotion. Maybe he's also semi drowning in the emotion because it can be intense sometimes. And if he has the ability to just bring the awareness, and you say to him, hey, I don't want to make decisions when I'm in this part of my cycle. Even when I feel like I want to burn the house down, I don't. So if you can support me by just being that conscious reminder, that would be really great for both of us. And then it's a teamwork. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's so important that we communicate this. I feel if you don't communicate it, you're really like doing a disservice not only to you but to like the people around you, because yeah, the more we understand ourselves, the more we can just understand each other and work together in such a nice way, you know? It's simple. Of course it's also complicated, but it just requires a little awareness.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. And it's again, it's just awareness. It's just about us talking about it more. I mean, think about it. The more, I don't know how you started learning about cycles, but I remember I was sitting with a group of women. They were a bit older than me, and they were talking about how they felt when they were ovulating. I was still on the pill. I had no idea. I had no idea what ovulation felt like. I was like, ovulation, what is that, you know? And how do you know when you're ovulating? I had no idea. I had no idea what that feels like.
Yeah.
Now I absolutely know what that feels like,
Yeah.
but it was me being around other women who are aware of these things, and brought this in. And then I was able to be a part of it as well, which I thought was so the more we talk about it, the more well known it becomes.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I want to also add to it because for me, it's been a long journey. And I like also the pill really took away my sensitivity as well. And it took me a long time to like, okay, now I understand. Now I'm bleeding. This is what I feel like. But actually becoming a Wim Hof method instructor was like the key of all of it, because I started practicing breath work and ice bathing a lot. And I started doing it in like your typical fashion, like, okay, yeah, you ice bathe every second day, or like, you know, you do your breath work like every day. And then I was like, no, like this feels so off right now. And then I started making the connection point to like, oh, actually, right now I'm 3 days before my period and ice bathing feels super intense.
Yeah.
Whereas ovulating and I ice bathe, I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go. I feel like a rock star. Like, this is no problem. So then I really started understanding on like a more physical level. And I'm grateful for it because, you know, a lot of people we understand and cycle intellectually, which is like a lot of life. We understand things from the mind, but I think until we really feel it in the body, it doesn't really land.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and this is why it's so important and to teach everybody, but in this case, women, about how to connect to their body. Because yes, you can understand you have, the different phases in your cycle, and this is what happens then hormonally, and this is what. But until you have an embodied experience of it, how will you know? How will you know what's best for your body? You just listen to what everybody else says to do, and how do you really know what's true for your body? This is the whole thing about bioindividuality, which is my days as a nutritionist. This is why nutrition is so challenging, because no one person is also the same. Everybody is unique. And yeah, women are very different from men. And a lot of the keto and ice bath and all of these cultures were created by men. So it feels very good for them, and it's very logical, and they have a very different cycle. So this is why it's super important women like you are also entering into these worlds so that you can also adapt it in a way that is actually serving of the feminine. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. And it's so relevant right now because I you know, I have a history of working in science and health, and it's like only becoming now more aware to me that all studies are done on men. Every fucking study is done on men. And there's, okay, I understand that men are more simple and so you can do a study and it's not so complicated, but also like, how on earth are we supposed to truly understand all the science that's out there for us as women when it's all being done on men? Like, it seems somehow so, there's such a big gap between what's out there and then like how we can actually incorporate it into our lives. So I feel more and more it's so important that we become the researchers of our own body and really like tune in and advocate for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, there's more and more organizations now that are starting to become aware of this and are starting to either bring this awareness into the fact that majority of studies are done on men, and also starting to cultivate and create studies that are done on women for women, which is super good, super beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I also get it, right? I was thinking about it like logically. If we were to do studies on women, we would really need to find women in certain parts of their cycle in order for it to work, which is beautiful. It would actually be so interesting to see that, but it requires more time and
A
patience.
lot more time, a lot more effort, a lot more energy. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Wow. So, yeah, I feel very full with what we talked about. I think I want to circle a little bit around, if you want, ovulation, because we talked so much about the end part of the cycle and, yeah, how we can deal with that. But I feel like ovulation is also such a beautiful time and a beautiful part of the cycle. And you said like in that time period, you really utilize that time to create. Um, yeah, do you want to share a little more about that particular part of the cycle and what you found for yourself?
Yeah, so as soon as hormonally speaking, like your estrogen starts dropping right after you don't, yeah, you don't get pregnant, which is also interesting, right? So we go through a mini death cycle every single period. So especially for women who want to be mothers, and even for those who women who don't, it's like the dead egg syndrome, like you literally have a mini death inside your body, and even if you want babies or not, it can just be heightened. If you do want babies, there's a sadness there. There's like a loss of like life didn't get born. And there's a decaying, yeah, process of the inner lining of your womb that is slowly no longer being fed, and it's starting to get ready to peel off and flush away. And that's essentially what your menstruation blood is. And so on a hormonal level, the moment that your body starts bleeding, all of a sudden estrogen starts coming back into your body, which makes you feel like an amazing rock star queen. So this is where, like for me, day one of my bleed is like, oh my God, thank goodness, because I know that from here on, it's like the lights are going to just turn up more and more and more in the room for the next 14 to 16 days. So I'm on my luteal here, obviously with all my yawns here. It's like, oh, um, for my phase of my follicular phase, I really think about content creation for me, right? Because it takes a lot of energy. So actually, it's interesting. When I'm in the luteal phase, I can oftentimes do less, but I have more creativity from my mind coming in because I'm doing less. So I have inspiration come in, but I don't act on that. When I'm in my follicular cycle is when I could be filming all day or creating content all day or writing things all day or doing my emails, or like that's when I'm actually in the doing phase. So the second half of my cycle is often more just contemplation, feeling, allowing, and then the first half of my cycle is usually in the, yeah, in the do, when I'm in my productive phase, the yang phase. I talk about this in Cycle Wisdom. It's like the first 2 weeks is the yang. This is the fire. I can do it all. I work out differently. I do HIIT workouts, or yeah, lifting weights, or breaking a sweat. Kind of my favorite woman on YouTube during those times is Pamela Rife.
Oh
She's
yeah.
like this. Yeah. So I do her in the first half, and then the second half I'm way more of like a Pilates with Nicole, you
Yeah.
know. It's a bit challenging, but it's relaxing, or I do my own embodiment movement. So yeah, for me, ovulation, it's like it's such a beautiful time. There's so much creative life force energy that can be cultivated and created and harnessed, especially if you're not making children. It's literally where you're the most creative. So this is how I use these ovulation times. And also, like, if I really want to go out or I really want to be social, because I can work a lot sometimes, and I get a lot of social contact from my work. But if I really want to be social, then I will go out and I will plan a party or go do something really fun around this time, or a photo shoot. It's the best time for photo shoots.
Nice. I love it. Sometimes we have big retreats and I'm like, fuck, I wish I was ovulating right now. Like everything would be so different. But it's true, there is like something magic to the ovulation time and also something magic to the bleeding time. It's just like
Yeah.
different. Race where you are and it's always bringing a different energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more that we can accept that and more we can educate people around what it's like, the more acceptance there will be from everyone. And the more flavors and the more opportunities for all ways of the human experience to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as
Yeah.
it is.
Thinking what you were saying before that like, in the work environment also it would be a really good time to say like, hey, now I can take on more projects, give it to me, and then let me chill out more in the later part of my cycle. And there's a book called Fast Like a Woman. I don't know if you've heard about it, or Fast Like a Girl. It's by a doctor. She talks about the differences between women and men, and she was saying like that women should truly have like 3-week work week and then a week off, whereas men can really have like a week and a weekend. And so it also, I mean, maybe not 3 weeks, but something around that where you're like, I'm on fire, to like take on more projects at that time makes sense.
Yeah, I could totally do that. I mean, just in my own life, that's what I did. And for me, when I bleed, it's like mine is really day 21 until, yeah, the first 2 days of my cycle, which I have around a 32 day cycle depending. So like that is the time where I'm like, just chill, you know? But I can definitely say for 3 weeks from around day 2 of my cycle till about day 21, let's go. I can do a lot. I'd be curious if there are, if a company were to actually work with the feminine cycle, I would be curious if its productivity would increase or decrease. And I have a feeling it would increase because there would be more output when yeah,
I
when
also,
there's the ability.
I mean, it does, it's just like, it would make more sense, right? Because anyway, when you're not productive, you're just there doing nothing. So it would make sense to take that time, truly rest and recover, and then you come back like, let's go, I'm ready.
Yeah, exactly.
There just needs to be more female people who are willing to make these claims and be bold enough to tell their bosses like, hey, like something needs to change. But yeah, it takes time, maybe generations, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that it happens inside the microcosm. Like, for instance, whenever my women who I work with, who work for me, or even my co-teachers, whenever we're on the last couple days just before bleed or just at bleed, it's like, yeah, I'm moving super slow today. I'm like just before my bleed. You know, it's like, oh, cool, no worries, take your time. And yeah, and sometimes there are things that need to happen. Sometimes it's like, I don't want to do this right now, and this just needs to get done. Life isn't perfect. You're not going to be able to, like, that's also being too in the rigid, trying to control everything, right? So yeah, that is also important to acknowledge. And yeah, I try within my little organization. I have two women who work for me consistently, and sometimes a third. And it's like, yeah, whenever we're right around the bleed, it's just like, okay, cool. So take it easy. You know, don't do too much. I'll take on this extra thing. And then when you get back to work in 2 days, when you're back on it, like just send me your updates. And it works fine. We still get enough done. And I feel much more in integrity. Yeah, because I don't also want to be pushed to do things when it's just not going to come from that vibrational frequency that I want it to come from anyways. Things will get missed, more errors will happen. There's literally like PMS brain. My brain doesn't search for words in the same way It's really a thing. So yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, really well said that we can do it in our little micro worlds. And that's actually in the end what makes the difference. It's the little steps that we take that add up and can really ultimately have an impact on people.
Exactly.
Beautiful. So I have one last thought about this whole thing because I think for me, something that really gets missed a lot is women going into menopause or who are have already ended their cycle. And this is coming up for me a lot because I'm now, as a Wim Hof Method instructor, in contact with older women a lot in my workshops, but also instructors. And I've had some older women really tell me that, and it really, really touched me that they said like they really feel that they're kind of like um, an ignored population, that they're just like disappeared, or like, they really don't feel like that they're important in a way, which I find crazy because when I think about elder women, I'm like, you have so much wisdom and knowledge, and like you're so embodied, and you have this like lifetime of knowledge inside of you, and I have so much respect for that. And at the same time, I think we don't often talk enough about what's happening in menopause, that all your hormones are gone and depleted. And for a while, the transition phase is fucking challenging. And,
Yeah.
and then you're just like expected to live your life normally, but like everything is changing inside of you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I had a beautiful sister who bought the Psycho Wisdom course this last week, and she's watching it with her mother. And I've had a few women who were premenopause and or had just gone through menopause go through cycle wisdom before, and they brought this in. They were like, "How do I track my cycle? Is it just finished?"
Mm,
Mm. And for me, I've also heard this piece. I mean, I'm an embodiment mentor, right? So I can't speak about things. I don't feel it's true for me to speak about menopause so much until I get there, and then I'm sure I'll have some wisdom and some things to share about it. But I have heard this from women as well. And first of all, even men have cycles. Even men can like track themselves for 3 months in a row and see if they can track a pattern. Men can track themselves for a whole year. I know men who are more yearly have yearly cycles, and around wintertime they get depressed. And this is kind of like, yeah, they have seasonal depression or whatever it is. So for women who are premenopausal and or postmenopausal, the thing that I often say is still get to know your body and track yourself. And I say use the moon. So what I would do is, and what I often tell to women who have stopped bleeding, or even they've had hysterectomies or any other sort of reason why they're no longer bleeding, other than birth control, of course, that start like with the new moon, and just day one on the new moon, how am I feeling mentally, physically, emotionally, energetically? How is my yoni doing? How is my libido? Like really create kind of a scale where you can just track yourself and become aware of your different bodies. And then do it all the way through till the full moon. Do it every day until the full moon. Track. Do I feel a difference? And maybe for me, I'm flipped on the moon. So for me, usually on the new moon, I actually have way more energy than on the full moon. I don't know why. It's just the way that it is for me. Um, so use that, and then start working with the moon. How is it when I'm waxing, when the moon is waxing? How is it when the moon is waning? Where am I in relation to this cycle? Do that for 3 months, and then see if you again can notice a cycle. And your cycle, your journey will also have its own rhythm. And you probably will be able to point out a pattern in some way, shape, or form, and then see if that pattern sticks. That would be my recommendation. Like, just because you stop bleeding doesn't mean that you're not still feeling your own rhythms. It's just different. And all the more reason for women who are postmenopausal to start doing this work and to start learning about what's supporting them and to start sharing it, because yeah, that's how we change it, right?
absolutely. I want there to be more women sharing about it because I'm like, I'm going to go through that stage. And like you said, I also cannot speak so much to it because I don't know anything about it on a physical level. But it's good to have people who are going through it, who are embodied, to share more, even if it's different. So there's also like yeah, community that we can support each other and be like, okay, I know a little more what's going to happen, and how I can hold myself and be held in that time also.
Yeah, there was one thing that it just came to me as you were speaking. There was this doctor who I was in the field facilitation, trauma informed facilitator training this year. And she was a doctor. And she shared with me, which I did not know, that the inner lips, your inner labia, start to like pull back and like disintegrate, basically. They start to like wither and shrink as the estrogen, yeah, as the estrogen in your body is slowly starting to decrease around the age 40, 42. Of course, it's different for every woman. So she highly, and I don't do like, yeah, I still don't know enough about it to know yet. And I don't do hormones, like I don't do birth control or anything like that. And it was really good for me to be off of that. But one of the things that she recommended, and she comes from the doctor, you know, the doctor school of thought, that there is like this hormonal estrogen cream for women who are in their mid 40s, late 40s, so to prevent their pussy lips from shrinking.
Oh,
So knowing this knowledge, I was like, holy shit, I had no idea. Honor your inner lips, ladies, you know, whatever stage you're at, to like really choose to honor them. And I personally think, I would like to think that, yeah, continuing to be sexual and continuing to play with yourself and honor yourself and connect to yourself and to your yoni will continue to keep your libido high and your reproductive organs very healthy. But that is just a fun fact that I didn't know, so maybe some others didn't know either.
wow, thank you for sharing. I mean, wow. It's so crazy, right? I mean, we were talking before about Pussy, the book Pussy by Regina. What is her last name?
Thompson or something? I can't remember. Yeah.
Me hope, because she's like in her maybe 60s or something like this, and she's fully going for it and like super
Yeah.
sexual. And I'm grateful to see that, because I'm like, okay, you're like an older lady and you are like kicking ass.
Yeah.
But on a physical level, things are happening. So it's really good to be educated about these things, to know. And yes, honor our pussy lips now, because like that's it. That's really crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Also, Lori Handlers, she's an ISTA facilitator and she does her own facilitation as well, but she's like 70 something. And she's still like, yeah, she's still really getting it. And she's like, she's all about youth and vibration and keeping your sex drive high, even when you're like, so she's also another one for women who are wanting to be inspired and learn more about, yeah, how do we keep these parts of ourselves, youth and online. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I mean, I think it really comes back to understanding ourselves, knowing ourselves, feeling ourselves, and that's the basis of it all. Yeah,
Agreed.
Amanda, what a juicy
Mm.
conversation. I always love talking to you. I feel like you're just like a spring of knowledge, and I could ask you really like 100 more questions, but I think
Mm.
really like, yeah, really well-rounded conversation, and I really appreciate you and what you're giving to the world, especially for women. I know that I've gained a lot from you and what you put out there. So I just wanted to thank you for doing.
Mm. Thanks, love. Yeah, it's beautiful. I really love the authenticity of just having a conversation that can be shared to a wider network of people who are interested in these topics. And it's been beautiful to be here with you and to share. Perfect timing, literally. I just created like a discount offer last week, so cycles are is very much in my mind around cycle wisdom. And yeah, so it's so funny that the timing is so perfect because I know we also tried to do it a little bit before. So yeah, it's all perfect and it all works out. Yeah.
And so when someone wants to purchase Cycle Wisdom, for example, they just go onto your website, available there.
Yeah, yeah. So I have multiple. Actually, one of the things that I'm doing is taking all the courses from the Pleasure Academy, and now they're self-study paced courses, so people can just do them on their own from their own time. There's different chapters, etc. So
Nice.
now anybody who wants to do, and I'm kind of working on the customer journey. This is my big project this year. Like, what was the journey I went on to become the embodied woman that I am today? And each like it's like you start here cycle wisdom, and if you're really good at cycles, then you would go to womb wisdom. And this is where, for people who have a hard time setting their boundaries, don't know what they like inside the bedroom, really struggle with people pleasing, even in relationships, saying yes or letting someone enter you before you're ready. There's a lot of like contraction and trauma and pain and blockages and numbness that can happen inside our yonis because of that. So then that would be, you know, the course for them. So right now should be ready, but it's basically, if you go to academy.amandabiccum.com, under courses, there will have all the different courses that I offer, and that women who want to journey online and learn about these things can dive into. Yeah.
Beautiful. Sure to put that also underneath the show. So if people want to take a look, I recommend it.
Mm.
Changed my life. So I can imagine. I'm also curious about the womb course. I'm also going to look in it myself. So again, thank you. And it sounds like an amazing offering. And just before we end, is there anything new coming up this year that we should be looking out for from you?
Newness. Yeah, I mean, mainly online, mainly in person.
Yeah.
So, I have a really good series called Embracing the Darkness, which is a really fun 2 and 3 day series that I just did in Copenhagen, and I'll be doing again in Copenhagen and in Amsterdam. So, this is all about polarity and learning. It's for men and women, learning about light masculine, dark masculine, how to play with attraction, desire, and really go for what you want in the bedroom and in life.
Mm.
There's also the initiatrix. So for women who are very, yeah, more advanced, you've done istas or you've done other type of training around your womb or around your sexuality, you've healed some of your trauma, and you want to go deeper into tantric practices and rituals. That's something that I host with Aria Hendricks. That's happening in Portugal. We're doing one in Goa, but it's probably a little late for those. But we're doing one in Portugal as well. And then there's the Embodied Woman Retreat, which is my baby, and it's fully my own kind of creation, where I take women out into nature, and from the moment you arrive to the moment you end, you are in a relaxing, nourishing balm of feminine practices and rituals. And it's really for the woman who doesn't want to like go to a training and do more, but she wants to go and be more and relax in her own being, and take intimacy practices home, where you can practice with your partner or you can practice with your sisters. And yeah, that's going to be happening in May in the Netherlands.
You. Oh man, I'd
Yeah.
love to come. You only do it once a year?
The Embodied Woman, yeah, it's once a year. It's this year, it's from May 2nd to the 7th.
Wow.
So it will
Sounds
be amazing. If you're available, it would be amazing. We have
I'm
a really beautiful group of women coming. And it's not so far. Germany's like right there.
no, I'm in Canada in May.
Oh, bummer.
Really be right there because being embedded with a bunch of women, it just already sounds my body's like, woo, let's go.
Yeah, it's that's why I created it, because I was like, I just want to be for a full week in my practices. I just want to be melting and drippy, juicy, yummy. Oh, yes, please, kind of energy. And instead of like in doing, like practice, deep process kind of work. So yeah, well, maybe next year. Are you always there in May?
No, no,
Okay,
this year is just how it is, but next year I'll put it on my
yeah.
calendar.
Amazing. That'll be the third year. So it'll be amazing to have you. I will have something in probably October. It will be a 3 day thing, non-residential, but it's kind of like an embodied women taster, where like 40 women will come together and we'll do practices and dive into the journey for a little bit of a taster. But so you can also come by if you want to in October as well. So yeah, we'll stay connected. You can yeah.
Definitely down to take one of your in-person journeys. Sounds amazing.
Yay.
I recommend it, and yeah, I recommend everything because it's so lovely and wonderful, and I feel your passion, love that oozes into it.
Thanks, love. Well, thanks for having me here, and I look forward to when we meet again, whether in person or online.
Me too. Until
All
then,
right, love.